Imagine waking up one morning to the thunderous roar of fighter jets, hearing the crackle of radio transmissions, and seeing your world turn upside down. A small, remote group of islands, lying almost forgotten in the South Atlantic Ocean, suddenly becomes the stage for a breathtaking conflict that will see two nations battle for more than just land. It's about pride, honor, and a nation's identity on the line. The Falklands War of 1982 wasn't just a military conflict. It was a brutal reminder of the power of national pride, the iron grip of politics, and the fire of competition between two world powers. In just 10 weeks, over 1,000 lives were changed, and the futures of Argentina and Britain were rewritten. Welcome to the gripping, high-stakes story of the Falklands War, where fighting for territory means fighting for everything. The Falkland Islands are like an oasis in the vast, empty South Atlantic, lying more than 300 miles from the coast of Argentina and over 8,000 miles from the United Kingdom. Yet, these remote islands were the focal point of a bitter conflict between Argentina and Britain, two nations with centuries-old legacies of exploration, power, and imperial dominance. The dispute over the Falklands wasn't a new one. It had rumbled on for decades, a stubborn ghost of colonial history. The British first claimed the islands in 1765, but by the early 19th century, Argentina had declared its independence and moved to assert control over the islands. As the years passed, control shifted hands between Argentina and Britain, but in 1833, the British permanently took possession of the islands, ejecting the Argentine settlers. Since then, Argentina has claimed the islands as their own, calling them the Malvinas. The Falklands, it seemed, were a symbol of an unresolved imperial legacy, a historical wound for Argentina, and an ongoing test of Britain's sovereignty in the modern world. Fast forward to 1982, and the stage was set for a dramatic showdown. Argentina, under the military dictatorship of General Leopoldo Galtieri, was in a state of economic and political turmoil. The junta, facing public dissatisfaction and growing unrest at home, was desperate for a victory to unite the people and restore national pride. What better way to do that than by reclaiming the Falklands, a clear symbol of national sovereignty? Meanwhile, in Britain, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher was grappling with her own challenges. Facing tough economic times and domestic criticism, she needed to show the British people that they were still a global power, that they still commanded respect on the world stage. The Falklands, British territory, were non-negotiable in her eyes. So when the Argentine forces launched an unprovoked invasion on April 2nd, 1982, Britain's response was swift and decisive. On the morning of April 2nd, 1982, Argentina landed troops on the Falklands. The invasion was almost a complete surprise, because tensions had been building for weeks, but the speed and audacity of the move still stunned the world. 2,000 Argentine soldiers quickly overran the islands, pushing aside the small British garrison stationed there. The stakes couldn't have been higher. For Argentina, this was a moment of pride and restoration. For Britain, it was a matter of honor and international reputation. Falklands War, it was game on. Margaret Thatcher wasted no time. She mobilized the Royal Navy and dispatched a task force to the South Atlantic. Ships, aircraft carriers, destroyers, and submarines were put in motion. The British had to act quickly before Argentina could solidify its control and fortify the islands. By April 5th, the British task force began its long journey toward the Falklands, a distance of over 8,000 miles. It would take days, but the countdown was on. Meanwhile, Argentina dug in. The Argentine forces prepared to defend what they believed was rightfully theirs. The islands, rugged and inhospitable, were transformed into a fortress, with artillery placed in key strategic points and soldiers entrenched in the island's windswept hills. 3,000 miles of ocean separated the two armies, but the real battle wasn't just about geography. It was about resolve. The Falklands War was multidimensional, with fighting on land, in the air, and at sea. One of the most dramatic moments of the war came on May 4th, 1982, when the HMS Sheffield, a British destroyer, was struck by an Exocet missile fired by the Argentine Navy. The missile caused an explosion that led to the ship's eventual sinking, marking the first time a British warship had been sunk in action since World War II. It was a shocking moment, showing that the stakes were indeed high, and both sides would pay a heavy price. The skies above the Falklands were dominated by fighter jets, with the Royal Air Force and Argentina's Air Force engaging in high-risk aerial combat. On the ground, British forces began a series of amphibious landings and land battles, often in freezing, harsh conditions. The Battle of Goose Green was one of the pivotal moments. British forces, numbering around 1,000 soldiers, faced off against an Argentine defense of 5,000 troops. The fight was brutal, with the British paratroopers using their superior training and tactics to force the Argentine surrender on May 28th. But the fight didn't end there. As Britain's task force closed in, tensions reached their peak. With Argentina's defenses weakening, British troops began to land on the islands in full force. The key was Port Stanley, the capital of the Falklands. A brutal siege ensued, with the British forces securing the town on June 14, 1982. Argentina's forces surrendered, ending the conflict. The war lasted a mere 10 weeks, but the impact was far-reaching. 255 British soldiers and 649 Argentine troops lost their lives, and thousands of others were wounded. For Argentina, the loss was devastating. The military junta had been discredited, and in just over a year, the Argentine democracy would be restored. For Margaret Thatcher and the British government, victory in the Falklands strengthened their grip on power and bolstered Britain's global standing. However, the conflict didn't settle the territorial dispute. Argentina continues to claim the Falklands as part of its national territory, and the Falkland Islanders remain fiercely loyal to Britain. With 99.8% of voters in a 2013 referendum choosing to remain a British overseas territory. The Falklands War was a tragic and bloody chapter in the history of both Argentina and Britain, but it also marked the end of an era for colonial conflicts. In the 21st century, the Malvinas Falklands remain a symbol of national pride, but also a tangible reminder of the cost of territorial disputes. The question of who truly owns the Falklands remains unresolved, and the echoes of 1982 still resonate in the political discourse of both nations. What was it all for? Politics? Pride? Power? One thing is certain. The Falklands War may have been fought on a small set of islands in a remote part of the world, but its repercussions continue to be felt on both sides of the South Atlantic. Long after the guns fell silent, the fight for the Falklands remains a testament to the passion and determination of two countries clinging to their own identity, and to the bitter legacy of colonial conflict.